So welcome. This is my talk about learning Substance Designer by completely breaking it. So let's get right into it. Let's start by just asking what Substance Designer is. So Substance Designer is a node-based texture creation tool. This is what it looks like. This is basically all you see in it. I have it open over here. I have this little material. Hopefully the panning works, and also if I'm going too fast, I'll try to pause on the most important parts on what's on the screen. I know internet and stuff can be weird like that. So this is Substance Designer. It has these nodes that connect together to create 3D textures, and it allows you very easily to make like the full set of textures you need for a material. That's kind of the general purpose of it. It has this 2D view down here, which is the different nodes, and you can kind of use that to preview. And then it has this 3D view, which shows you what you're kind of building in totality. So that's Substance Designer in a very, very quick nutshell. It also has parameters over here, a library over here, and then your files over here. And that's it. That's basically the entire program. Not to be confused with Substance Designer, which is the other main product, Substance. It's actually Algorithmic makes. That, of course, is a UV kind of texture applying software. I don't know anything about it. This is not a talk about it, but just to get that out of the way, two different softwares. Okay, so yeah, to summarize that, Substance Designer is a node-based software for making complex, layered, physically based textures. Physically based being important there. That means textures that try to emulate the real world and work well in shaders that emulate real world lighting. That's kind of what it's made for. It uses a series of pretty simple transformations to 2D data and noises to do that. So here we have a blend node, which is really important because you can bring two noises together and put them together in many different ways. It also has stuff like transformation 2D. You're moving stuff around, I have the circle. And actually I use this over here. Let's quickly go to make a sort of weird rock texture. So we're going to view that in 3D. So what you can see is that we use the transformation and the blending. We use this directional warp thing, which kind of pushes the pixels around based on this input. And we do some blurs on it, make it a bit more rock-like. And then we use this tile texture to put it together to create this weird rock texture that I made just to show this off. And this is kind of a normal Substance Designer workflow. You're putting these things together, using some nodes, using some noises to make some sort of complex, sort of randomly generated, precisely generated texture. So that's that. And it's optimized for it, Substance Designer, optimized for this kind of workflow. All of the marketing, the documentation, what the software kind of is intended to show from the start when you're downloading it, suggests you should be using it like this way, in this way. And it supports it, and all the stuff for the software is used to make physically based materials. All the tools inside the software are most accessible to use this stuff. So there's like stuff for normals. All the noises are really made to add a lot of complexity very quickly. All the shapes are there. All of the stuff is made to do these physically based real world materials. But you don't have to do that. Oh wait, one more slide. This is to compare Substance Designer to other node-based tools. What Substance Designer really does interesting is that it's just this. Like Unreal, Unity, Blender has all these kind of node-based things which you can use for materials, but that's just one part of the software. You can do a lot more with it. Substance Designer really is squarely focused on just the materials aspect. There's also Houdini, which does kind of broadens a 3D aspect to do models, materials, lighting. But Substance Designer is really about those 2D textures turning into 3D materials, which also makes it really interesting to kind of play with, because it's so focused, it's very easy to break out of that using just a few things. So yeah, this is once more what Substance Designer looks like, what we're going to be looking at a lot in the rest of the talk. All right, so this talk is about breaking Substance Designer, and there's kind of two ways you can interpret breaking a software. The first one, I push to kind of the limits of the intended use. That means something doing really, really ornate. This is a really, really amazing material made by an artist at Naughty Dog now, Jonathan Benios. This is a Baroque wall. It took I think 50 hours for him to make. A lot of complexity, a lot of stuff. He has a GDC talk about making this. It's really amazing. I'll put that in a link on my Twitter after this talk if you want to see it. And this is one way of breaking it. That's not the way we're going to break it today, because that takes a lot of work and effort, and that's not something I have on my hands these days. We're doing something more like this, doing things silly, not intended. This is my pizza cube. It's a cube of pizza. Doing things kind of not intended to be used in this way. Like, you're never going to use this in a game, this material, but you can make it in Substance Designer. All the tools are there. And this is actually probably a bit too close to Substance Designer's intended use, because it's at least a 2D. It's actually a material that I made in Substance Designer. Where we're going to be completely ignoring that and using this tool to do things that don't even have any use in games or in materials. All right, so how did this exploration of breaking Substance Designer begin? Well, it began just by using Substance Designer in games. This is a game I made, and I made the art for it, all the materials in Substance Designer, and that's a very intended use for the product, making the stucco material, the marble material, stuff like that. And I really do like Substance Designer. I use it. I try to use it at least once in every game I work on, just to learn it more. I just came out of college, so I think just learning tools like this is something I always try to focus on and be aware of. And it's used, I've done a lot for making materials. I've made stuff like this column, or even this yarn ball for a cat fighting game, which was pretty fun. And these are all, again, stuff that you expect to make in Substance Designer. But there's an interesting question. What happens if you use Substance Designer on projects that aren't even 3D, like a 2D game? Can you do it? Does it work? Are there actual uses for it? And the answer is yes. So this is a thing I made, and I'll go right over to it. So this is a kind of a wavy texture I made for the background of our my 2020 Mass Digi Summer Innovation Program game, Raccoon Revenge. So it's this raccoon pattern. It tiles, if we can see here. There you go. You can see it tiling all across the 2D view. And I made this because our UI artist was kind of frustrated trying to make a tileable diagonal pattern. I was like, you know what? I have a software that probably could do that, even though it's just one texture. And that's what happened. I put it together. I also have some fun over here input parameters, which allow us to change kind of the whole scale of it. So for this one, we have a skew one, which can change to the default here. I'm going to do it slowly. Should be done actually in integer form. So that it kind of changes the scale of it, which can be helpful. It's also being slow because of the talk. Yeah, you can see there. And then we also have one that changes the position of the larger band. Wait, that's the skew again. Never mind. Let's go back down here. There we go. Whoa. And this is also really good for rapidly prototyping these kinds of arts, because you have all of these parameters accessible at any time from the node map that we can. Sorry, one moment. That we can quickly do things. And that's what I did for this project. I made a lot of different raccoon textures and asked which one to choose. And it was really easy in Substance Designer, and it was a really good use for using Substance Designer for doing something you would probably do in Illustrator or Photoshop normally. And I have another example of that. So I wanted to ask this question: can we use Substance Designer to replace Adobe products such as Photoshop and Illustrator? I just wanted to see, and I tried to use it in a project where I didn't want to use Photoshop and Illustrator, not because I didn't have it, just because I just didn't want to see if I could not. But first of all, you can't use Substance Designer to replace Adobe products, because Substance is owned by Adobe, but it is cheaper than the Creative Cloud. So at least you're paying only $20 a month with the Indie license of the with Creative Cloud. There is a use for maybe trying to replace all of Photoshop with Substance Designer, which is one thing I've kind of explored. So one example of that, this is more an Illustrator use, is making kind of signs. So Substance Designer has this text tool up here. You can see it right here. I'll drag it down. And what that allows you to do is exactly that, use text in your textures. It doesn't have many uses. I'll come over here to show you. In actual like organic material making, it would be really weird if you use a text input as like the basis for like a noise. So this is hello world copied across a thing. It's also wouldn't be very weird. It would be very weird for like a mask. So you can see that here. Let's change. I'm gonna do a quick change here. Don't worry about this. Okay, it's gonna be very high, but that's okay. You can see I made hello world with some pebbles on top over the dirt texture. Now it makes a lot of sense. And this is one of the things where it's like, okay, they put in an extra tool that wasn't for this kind of organic material creation, but it allows us to do some interesting things. For example, you could make your resume in Substance Designer if you wanted to. Probably not the best idea. It's very hard to. You have to do a lot of moving around. But here we go. Here's my resume. But for an actual use, you can make it to use road signs in a game. So I have this thing. It uses a blur to get that rounded edge up here. You like blur it, and then you just take the lightest parts of that, and you can do it. And what's really nice is that you can export all of these signs in one batch. And if you make any changes up here to say the height of the sign, so you want to make it smaller, so it's more tight, it goes to all the signs you have, which can make things really easy to iterate, which is, I think, the best use of Substance Designer for using it in non-3D terms is using it to iterate and quickly get out a lot of assets if they're all kind of the same pattern. And so that's kind of two examples of using Substance Designer for things not exactly 3D, but still useful. But our next step in this exploration of if we can replace Substance Designer with Photoshop is if just kind of going all out and seeing what we can do. So I have this little picture of Boston right here. So I'm gonna just check we're doing okay. Yeah, great. Sorry about that. And what I have here is 3 different kind of filters you can apply to this picture of Boston. The first one is the decade filter. And what this does is I've made a lot of filters based on different decades. So this is the kind of 1960s filter. This is a 50s filter. 70s filter, 80s filter is kind of fun. 90, I didn't really know what to do. 2000s filter, and 2010s just the picture. And yeah, so you can actually add filters. It's pretty fun, honestly. I had a lot of fun making this. We can actually go in and look at what's behind the scenes of this specific node that I created. And so this chaos. And what this is just every single one of those filters being passed through and then going to this kind of switch, which lets you choose which one you want to send through. And it can be really helpful. So if you like drag this up to the 60s filter line, you can see you're adding vignettes, you're changing colors, using a curve modifier, which you might recognize from stuff like Photoshop. Or actually not curve modifier, it's used somewhere. Yeah, right here, which just allows you to just change the color, which can be nice. One other example I used for this is a deep fry filter. If you know memes, deep frying was a thing back in the day, kind of really take away the quality of an image. And what's really nice is because it has this parameter, you can like do 50% deep fry or just like 10%, just a bit of deep fry. This was also very fun to make. And this is something definitely Substance Designer can be good for, is quickly getting this kind of like parameterized variable-based thing. You can also, by the way, it's not clamped, this slider, so let's just put it up to 1,000,000 deep fry or 100,000, and you can really deep fry an image. And the last, I think, big use of Photoshop that I think I have to address is that you can do masks in Photoshop. That's really important. And you can do masks in Photoshop in Substance Designer, just like this. Look at that. We masked out the sky. I will say it only works for this one picture of Boston. You would have to make a lot of changes if you want to do some other masking. But the tools are there for you to do it. You just have to customly make it. Not probably a good use case, but I wanted to see if I could do it. And it turned out fine. So yeah, this is kind of just kind of a silly exploration of the different kinds of things you can do in Substance Designer using the tools Substance Designer has. Not really for something you would use for a 3D game or even something you would use efficiently. All of these things are a faster use process than other tools, but you can do in Substance Designer, which I think is worth exploring. Makes it worth exploring just that. And by the way, I mentioned that curve tool, which normally is used to change like the color temperature of pictures, but in Substance Designer, because it's a 3D thing, we can actually use that curve modifier on a height map. So we have this kind of pyramid height map over here. And what we can do is use the curve modifier, which is going on right over here, to create kind of a stair step effect. And I make a few of those, and we use some fancy masks, which I make down here, to create kind of this. And you might see where this is going. We add a lot more kind of color and texture to that on top. And then at the end, we come here, and we can view on 3D view, and we get a very flat pyramid. And we're going to quickly come over here, get the scale up to like 50. And you can see, so this is, again, using the basis of like the stair step is a tool you normally use to change color temperature, but when applied in the Substance Designer kind of way, you can actually make a really different kind of thing. You can make it to create architectural detail, which is not really something you think about, but because all it's doing is changing your color data. If your color data is tapped into the height of something, that it becomes a thing that changes height data, which is, I think, the lesson you learn from Substance Designer and doing this kind of exploration is that your data can be broadly understood. So in this, it's a stair step kind of thing. It's 2D data, but it has many uses because at the end of the day, it is just numbers being applied in sort of an interesting visual way. And I have some stuff to kind of explore that idea. So over here, what I've done is I've created this little value processor node. And what this does is you can put in a image and it can get a value from it. And what's this doing? Because it's all one uniform color, it's getting a unique identifier for each color in the RGB space. So this is black. Black is 0. And the way we do this is that red is the first digit of the number in like a 256 base kind of number form. So you can see here, if I change the red color here, it goes down. And that's what's going on. And then the green's the next digit, so that goes up much quicker. And then blue goes up very quickly because it's like 256 cubed every time you're changing it. But with this, you can make every color a specific number and use color as your data. One thing you can do with that is you can add 2 colors together and just see what that does. We have this little add node. It's not perfect, but it will do the job. So right now it's adding kind of a strong red. It's a bit over. It doesn't always work. But yeah, it's kind of adding black to red. So of course that's just going to get you back the color you have. But if we start putting some red back in, it goes up until it flips over and goes back down because we went to the next digit. And this is kind of a thing, and it can be interpreted back into the value processor to find the number. And so this was a big thing. You can see in the ad, it's a lot of work to add actually, because you have all those digits kind of flipping over and you have to track them. It's not perfect. I didn't actually solve it, but this is what's going on. Putting the split in, or putting all of the different digits in as the different channels of the RGB and putting that together back into a single color that it outputs. So one other thing you can do with this kind of number system I created is you can use Substance Designer to make a little chart, because it's all it is data in the back end. So we can use that data to make a pie chart. Or if you're not a fan of pie charts, because they're not the best readable thing, we can do a bar chart. And it shows you the quantities of the data and if we change it. So if we move this red down, as you can see, it moves around. And again, so this is, I really like this because what it is doing is taking the same data we see, which is just color data, image data on a screen, but it's interpreting it in 2 different ways and transforming it from the colors we see here to actually a data visualization. But you're bridging that in a way that follows through only through the 2D data and visually, which is something Substance Designer can do really well. And it's kind of just a fun explanation. I have one more example of this, which is a 3D bar chart. So if we actually go over and look at this, you can see we can bring this into 3D data because it's all Substance Designer is made for 3D stuff. We can make it add 3D stuff. So now what we can do is take this red over here, bring it up. That moves that up more. If we bring the green up, we'll actually see it's basically going to overpower the rest of them. Yeah, so it's a very high number now. Yeah, so it's just kind of fun little exploration about how we use data in this way. One other example of this I have, because we just have a bit of time, I believe. Yeah, got about 8 minutes. I made a bar chart creator, and we could go into this one. Not bar chart, barcode. I was gonna make a QR code, but that seemed too complicated, so I just went the nice 1D version. And what this is, and this is kind of fun because it shows you what a bar chart, barcode actually does. So what I do is I use the curve modifier again to take this nice smooth gradient and just choose which color it is, either white or black for each mode as you go over it. And that this is the actual encoding of all the numbers on the barcode. So we go through each one of them, and then it's an 8-digit barcode. So we have 8 of these switch things here, which will take the number we put in, take that digit of that number, and then set the code it's sending out to that. And then we just do a lot of blends to get it back to a normal barcode. And this is also fun because it's another way of using, kind of playing around with the data that's underlying all of this, putting it into a new encoding in terms of barcode, and taking that number down. I could have made it so that it used the value processor and like the color we had before to tell what the barcode is, but it was very late when I was doing it, this final example, and that's all together. So that's a quick exploration of some ways you can kind of break Substance Designer, do things with the software that it really is not intended to do. Let's go. I have a few extra slides. So we did the things you can use it that's more intended. We have the filters. This is kind of a general idea about it. Substance Designer asks us to understand the affordance of 2D images broadly. And at this point, I've fully forgotten this software was mainly designed for making nice looking dirt. I've gone way too far into just like the data underlying it and how it can be interpreted as a tool and as a software in different ways. We did the adding machine. So let's just end this out. So digital tools are designed, and particularly Substance Designer, to abstract computation, to abstract this idea of 2D transformations and turn that into something that creates 2D textures, creates basically materials we see in the world. But by going back and exploring that underlayer of both what it means as a software and what it's doing under the hood, we can understand more about what the software does. And when we come back and go back to just making normal 3D stuff, 3D materials, we can use that. Sorry, what?
Away from Montclair to
we can take that back and into our normal work where we can go out and make new discoveries. So this is the final thing, and I have just 5 minutes, so this is perfect. So I made this final one, which takes a few lessons I learned, such as the curve modifier, being able to create height information, and also the switch node over here. Actually, I have it in a few places to kind of create a parameter you can use, and also using the text in a material to add a label to the material, because with that switch, you want to do different things. And let's see how that looks. When it all comes together, creates this really nice Monument Valley type thing. And I've learned you can use the same underlying data to make different things. So if we come back, so we could do the Monument Valley, or we could make it a mountain. I changed the color and gives it a nice mountain noise, or a city, which doesn't look too good, but it technically could be interpreted as a city. And there's other parameters. So it was this entire exploration into how this software works and what it's made to do. We come back to it and we can make different stuff that you wouldn't be able to make before because you just weren't looking at the software in this way. So here we go. You can also change just how the hills are formatted, or even make them smoother or not, which can be nice. And yeah, and this is something I really like to do, make art with something like a tool like this, so we can make it really smooth like that. Yeah, that's basically it. Okay. The height of the mountains, which can be fun. We can say goodbyes to them, or we can bring them back up. And that's all something you do in Substance Designer. Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing now, and hopefully you all like the talk. If there's any questions, steps. All right. I think if no one has any questions, that's quite all right. You can reach me at Elijah Cob, but Cob with a 0 as no, on Twitter, and I'll post all the stuff I made in this on there if you want to look at it later. So thank you.